Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. Retired Admiral Thad Allen is in charge of the federal response in the Gulf. Welcome, Admiral. We are no longer seeing those pictures of that oil coming out of that well. When will it be done, shut and completely taken care of?
Well, this last week, as you know, we were able to statically kill the well from the top by putting cement down the pipe casing, and we pressure tested that the last 2 days, so that's holding. What we need to do now is come in through the bottom and fill what's called the annulus, the area between the casing and the well bore itself, and we're drilling very close to that right now, and that should happen later on this week.
And that's the relief well that we've heard so much about.
That's it.
Is the final process. Earlier in the week, there was a little bit of confusion. There was a message from BP that maybe the relief well might not be necessary, but it's necessary, it's happening. Is that right?
There was an inference early on there might have been some kind of an option on whether we're going to do this or not. That is patently not the case. I've discussed this with Bob Dudley. The relief well will finish.
Now, when the relief well is finished and we're no longer seeing those daily images of oil flowing, people in the region are worried that once that problem is taken care of, kind of the concern will disappear and they'll be left on their own. What do you say to that?
We're just moving to a different phase. Obviously, we're delighted there's not going to be a source for the oil, but if you're in Barataria Bay or the Chandelier Islands or Mississippi Sound or see the oil coming ashore on the beaches of Alabama and Florida, what you need to understand is we're going to keep cleaning it up. We've got a commitment to be there. BP is responsible. We are going to hold them accountable. And I would say this has been the largest environmental response in the history of this nation, and it will continue until the cleanup's done.
And what about your job? How much longer are you going to be on the case?
Well, I think certain conditions have to be met before we transition. It's going to be key. One thing is going to be key is Secretary Mavis's report on how to move to a larger recovery program for the Gulf and an organizational structure. And those discussions are going on right now.
But whose job will it be, if BP isn't holding up its end of the bargain, to get on the phone, as you did with Bob Dudley on this question of the relief well? Going forward, whose job will it be to make that phone call?
Well, first of all, on the relief, there will always be a federal on-scene coordinator to hold BP accountable. But as we move forward, there's other work to be done, including a natural resources damage assessment, looking at the larger socio-economic issues in the region. And I think Secretary Mavis's report on the follow-on structure will address a lot of things that go well beyond just the spill response itself that I'm responsible for.
You've had a lot of conversations with Bob Dudley, the new CEO of BP. Give us your sense. Do you trust him to take this going forward and all the responsibility that is still on BP's shoulders?
Well, you know, I don't hardly have an interview where they don't raise the word trust in BP in the same sentence. And what I tell everybody is that this is more of a requirement to cooperate, collaborate. We all have to be working on the same mission. We have to achieve the effects we're trying to achieve for the American people. And in that regard, I think we've been effective. And I think the tremendous amount of engineering that was done to control the source of the leak, all of this had to be brought in from other parts of the world and actually be designed. I think they've done a pretty good job at that.
So you think that it's a question of trust, but then there's also the question of competence. And in your dealings with them, you feel like they've been on the case. You haven't had to keep making these phone calls to get them back in line.
Well, as far as controlling the source of the well, industry owns the means of production, and we've brought a science team in there led by Secretary Chu. There's been tremendous oversight over every step of the way. We've consulted with other members of the industry, oil production industry. We've looked for independent validation by academicians and so forth. So it's more of an issue of how you bring everybody together, create unity of effort, but keep focusing on the effects you're trying to achieve.
One of the things the officials at BP have also said is that while they won't go back to this well itself, they might tap that reservoir, which has a lot of money inside of it for them. Is that appropriate for them to be thinking about that?
Well, frankly, that's a policy issue between BP and the Department of Interior. I'm focusing on the response right now, and that's something I would leave to them.
Okay, so the policy issue. What about a safety issue? Is it safe to go into that area again, based on what you've seen over the last several months?
Well, I think moving forward, we need to talk about the response framework for the Gulf. And as you know, there's a consortium of several oil companies have come together to talk about how might they put together a response framework that uses some of the technology that were successfully employed in this one. One of the challenges is the way they produce oil in the Gulf of Mexico is with wells that are on the bottom, with all the controls that are down there, including the blowout preventer. And the oil is all moved through pipelines. Some of the technology, including floating production platforms, shuttle tankers, and these vertical risers that are floating in the water, actually are technologies from the North Sea and off of Angola. And I think moving forward, we're going to have to develop a process that allows those technologies to be available if they're needed.
Also moving forward, have there been what lessons do you think have been learned for the next time there's a big disaster like this?
Well, I think if we look back and use this change of phases as a retrospective, I think there's some very positive things that have been done, but some things where we've had to adjust to things we did not expect to encounter. One of those were all the vessels of opportunity, at one point nearly 7,000, and how do you employ those, the command and control, the tracking. That actually led us to be able to improve our air surveillance, to be able to cue them better. And that actually was the result of an agreement we made with the 1st Air Force at Tyndall Air Force Base to take control of the airspace and coordinate all the air movement. So a lot of lessons learned moving forward, but a lot of this stuff had never been done before.
If you had to give BP a final grade on their performance, what would you say?
At the wellhead, I think they've done very well. What they are not good at, and it has not been part of their corporate competency or capacity in the past, is one-on-one transactions with individual citizens, and I think that's where the biggest gap in performance has been and where the most improvement needs to take place.
Okay, Admiral Thad Allen, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.